All right, we begin in the National Hockey League as the San Jose Sharks have ruined all of our fun. So, to recap, the St. Louis Blues gave offer sheets to two RFAs that the Edmonton Oilers have, Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg. By no means cornerstone pieces of the Edmonton Oilers franchise, but players that you would rather have than not. And certainly players you would rather have than have them leave for nothing. But maybe not players you wanted to pay that amount of money to. So it's an interesting, weird dynamic that goes on there. And the Edmonton Oilers can't just match immediately because their salary cap it sucks. So they were in a very difficult spot. And then fucking San Jose Sharks come in and just ruin all of our fun because the Sharks have acquired Cody Ceci from the Edmonton Oilers along with a third round pick in exchange for a defenseman who I guess played for Chris Knobloch somewhere and will probably factor in minimally to the Edmonton Oilers situation. Ceci has a long track record of being kind of a fringe defenseman who is trusted in situations that are greatly beyond his skill set. And so to go out and acquire this player from Edmonton to bail them out to get this guy is so frustrating. Like he is equal parts better than most of the defensemen the San Jose Sharks have, and also not a good NHL defenseman. And so to be like, no, we need to get that guy on our rebuilding roster right now for a third round pick, and only be taking on a third round pick and bailing these guys out of the situation with the Blues is so incredibly frustrating. The Oilers were in a jam, and to get them out for just an extra third round pick doesn't seem worth it to me. If I'm any other team, I'm like, you know what? That first next year is looking pretty good, or that second next year is looking pretty good. That is I can't imagine settling for just getting a third round pick to take on the final year of Cody Ceci's contract and needing to have Cody Ceci. Like, best case scenario for the Sharks is they're able to flip him at the deadline to a team that thinks they're in it and thinks they're a 10th defenseman away from making a run. So I don't see the real upside gain here from the San Jose Sharks to just take this on for a third round pick. Now, Mike Grier, their general manager, does have ties to the Oilers organization. First off, he played there. We know that part. Secondly, apparently his first job in management was a scouting position under Stan Bowman. And so, like, I guess that there was like a little bit of helping your guys out. But from a Sharks organizational standpoint, it doesn't help you to help the Edmonton Oilers. I don't think the Oilers are going to have the Sharks back in a trade somewhere down the road now because the Oilers were given options thanks to the San Jose Sharks. And so I don't think this makes any sense. And I think, quite frankly, the reason that this took so long to do was probably everyone else in the Sharks front office was trying to hold Mike Grier back from the phone, like the Avengers when they're trying to get Thanos's Infinity Gauntlet off, and there's just like guys they're pulling, and Thanos is being put to sleep by Mantis. And I watched this movie yesterday, that's why the reference is so deep. And they're pulling on both arms, and they're just about to get it off, and then someone punched him in the face, and he woke up. That's probably exactly, literally, blow for blow, what happened. Like I just this doesn't make any sense out there. And look, I understand there is, especially for struggling teams. And I obviously based in Calgary, work on Calgary radio at times, work on Calgary YouTube at other times. The Flames, I think, should be doing stuff like this, but this exact situation, it doesn't really seem like the Sharks are getting enough for what the Oilers actually needed in this situation. Like, Cody Ceci, just taking on Cody Ceci's contract to the Sharks is probably just worth a third round pick. But when you're looking at what it means now for the Edmonton Oilers, I think it's worth significantly more than a first or than a third round pick to the Edmonton Oilers to be able to free up that space and make this move. So now, what do the Oilers do? According to Puckpedia, with the contracts matched, the Oilers are about $6 million in the hole. You can absolutely make the case for not keeping Broberg and be fine. It's a $4.5 million cap hit for a player who has spent exactly 0% of his NHL career looking like a $4.5 million player. That being said, he is 23 years old and could absolutely be a $7-8 million player very, very soon. And so to lose that player from your organization for nada, I guess it's not technically nada. You get whatever the compensation is for an RFA of a contract that size. So you get something back for it. But that still stings a little bit. And so that is where I think this is interesting because the Edmonton Oilers, traditionally not an organization swimming in defensive talent. Sorry. Now they have Darnell Nurse, who is what he is, but I think a strong defenseman. Ekholm completely changed that organization and has got the most out of Bouchard. But I do think you could have looked at this year and had a pairing of Nurse, Broberg, Ekholm, and Ekholm and Bouchard, and then whoever you want on the stretch, Stetcher, Kulak, whoever. And been very much okay with it. Like there is a world where you can get a lot out of a Philip Broberg. I would suggest even $4.5 million out of him. But there's also a world where he kind of just isn't it. Like he becomes the Timu version of Evan Bouchard and never really quite clicks. And now for a team that is already paying too much on Darnell Nurse, who is about to be paying a lot for Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, whilst also already paying them a lot, and then also on top of that paying an extra to Evan Bouchard, you don't really want to waste $4.5 million if the guy isn't going to be that good. So it's an interesting call for Edmonton there. They also go out and acquire Vasily Podkolzin from the Vancouver Canucks earlier in the day. So that would potentially be your Dylan Holloway replacement. I personally would prefer Holloway over Podkolzin. There is absolutely some personal bias in there. I've interviewed the kid. I've called a couple of his games, so that like there's a thing there. So that I could absolutely be having a bias there, but I do think that Holloway is a little bit further along than where Podkolzin is. Although both players in kind of similar spots in their organization where pretty talented, just can't really stick, but probably would get like 25 minutes a night on the San Jose Sharks. So weird spots for them to be in. And so you can kind of see the case to not really accept to not really match either of them. But Edmonton now kind of has the cap situation where they can at least do it with one. And honestly, I would be attaching heaven and earth to an Evander Kane contract to try to get that one out of there. And then you can just keep both. And I think you feel pretty all right with that. And I like the team that they have built if they're able to keep those guys around and let them kind of start to fill in those roster spots. But no matter how this plays out, this was just fun. The offer sheets are there, so you may as well take advantage of it as much as you can. The fact that we only get this every few years is frustrating. And I'm not saying like go out and do this for random RFA fourth liner X, but there are pretty good players generally available in these spots. And I just put pressure on these teams to do it. And like if the St. Louis Blues are willing to move, let's say Pavel Buchnevich, are the Edmonton Oilers just not going to want to make a trade with them because they did this? That would be very poor management. Like, yeah, you can get pissed at a team for doing it, but I like in the long term, how much does it really affect what you're looking to do? And so like you can screw these up, you know, like there was the Jay Feaster, Ryan O'Reilly situation here a few years ago, several years ago now, that probably wouldn't have worked out great in the Flames' favor if that would have worked out. So it's not just a fail-safe 100% of the time, this thing is awesome, but it at least gets a little bit of buzz going. And look, like from a hockey standpoint, not that they're super focused on what I'm talking about, but this got some buzz about the National Hockey League for a couple of weeks when it probably, or for a week anyway, where it probably wouldn't have had any anyway. Player movement is king when it comes to conversations and stuff like that. So it's good for the league. I think it's I think an interesting way of team building, and it puts pressure on other teams and makes them make some decisions. So overall, this was a really, really fun week, and it provides some interesting looks for Edmonton. At the end of the day, if I'm Edmonton, I try to keep both. I think there's something there in Broberg, and I really think there's something there in Holloway. And even if there isn't, Broberg at 4.5 might be a little bit difficult to move, but it's 2 years and you can eat some of it anyway. That can be a big piece in a trade that you're trying to make. If nothing else, he can be a pretty good like salary matching type of a piece if you are trying to make some money work and something along those lines. Like if you are Edmonton and you're looking to bring in an $8 million player, well, now you have a very good trade chip and $4.5 million that you can kind of just shove into it and do that. And for a team that could be rebuilding, that would be an interesting piece to try to go out and move. And Holloway, I just think he's going to be good. And for a team that was within a game of the Stanley Cup final, I just don't think you should be giving up good for draft picks right now. And that, so I think Edmonton, like I said, I would try to move on from Kane. They have moved on from CC Greer, but that would be the move that I would try to make.